Okay. Okay, so just what we're going over our meeting agenda for today. Until 7:15, we will do a committee update. And then we are going to have a discussion based on the personality test that I sent you, as well as a little bit about that paper and defining what conservation is. And then at 7:30, our guest speaker, Crista Valentino, will take over. So again, thank you all for those who filled out the Youth Council introductions. It's a really great way to get to know each other because we're all over the world. So it's really exciting. And I will be using that information and creating a Youth Council profile pages. So if you want to edit that information, now that you know that it's going to be public, feel free to do so. Also, please send me a photo of yourself if you would like. So let's go right into committee updates. So for the Communications Committee, that comprises of Serena, who's on the call right now. Hi, Serena.
Hi.
Hi. And Rushant, who is a high schooler in India. He was unable to make it today. But with the Communications Committee, Brooke Mitchell is the Communication Committee lead, and her and Brooke are working together. We're all working on making a plan, and in August, all Wild Tiger social media responsibilities will be the Communications Committee. So we are working hard on that. So for the Science Committee, the most popular one, very exciting. I love science too. So Sarah Stanley, I have her on the video call as well. She will be the Science Committee project leader. She is here to tell you more about that. And what I hope is that after she explains what to do, I hope that you feel prepared and you can start working on the project. If you have any questions, please feel free to email Sarah anytime or stay on this call after 8 p.m. And we'll be happy to answer any questions. So I'm going to let it go over to Sarah.
All right. So hi guys, like Sarika said, I'm Sarah. I met Sarika in the spring of 2013 when we were studying abroad with the School for Field Studies in Turks and Caicos. A little bit about myself, I went to Clark University in Worcester, Massachusetts, and I got my bachelor's degree in environmental and conservation biology and my master's degree in environmental science and policy. During grad school specifically, I got really interested in GIS and land change modeling and remote sensing sciences and stuff like that. And so following those interests, I interned with the Massachusetts Bay's National Estuary Program, which is one of 28 estuaries in the U.S. that was created by the EPA. And they do like water conservation, habitat continuity, living resources, making sure that estuaries are healthy across the U.S. So I did a lot of work with them, and one of the main projects I did was to create an online interactive map resource that delineates the embayments of the Massachusetts coastline and also is a resource that talks about stressors and other things that are at work in those individual embayments. So what I'm going to do right now is in the group chat, I am going to share a link to that map just because it kind of, I'm working from that as a base from which we're going to model our first science committee project. So feel free to take a look at that at any time. What you'll see when you click on it is that a map pops up with the embayments in along the Massachusetts coast outlined in green. And if you navigate there, you can see that if you click on any individual embayment, you get a pop-up window that comes up with a little description and then a hyperlink that brings you to further details about that area. So essentially what we want to do is something along this line for India, for tiger reserves, and for organizations at work there. So I've taken the opportunity to map out a little outline here. I'm going to hold it up. So what we have is we've got India, and what we want to eventually have is all of these dots are tiger reserves. And we want a user to be able to click on a tiger reserve, which will then bring you to a pop-up window similar to the one that you saw in that Massachusetts map, which will tell you the name of the reserve, the year it was established, the area, a link to that reserve's website, and then a list of organizations at work there. So that's the general outline for what we're hoping to have as a final product. We'll take it a little further eventually, and we'll try to have all of the, under the list of organizations at work there, eventually you want those to each be hyperlinks. So as you click, you can click on the name of each organization, and that will take you to another page, which you guys will create, that has more specifics on that organization. So the overall, I guess, mission or goal for this map is to have one place where we can find a list of all the organizations that are working there, so that we have a list or an idea for potential partners going forward to do work, so that it can be and in the far future, so it can be a public tool that's interactive and engaging, and that can be used for different kinds of education and outreach. So to start the project, what we want to do is you'll find there are 49 reserves, and there's 9 students on the council. So that's going to be, what we want you to do is, if you go into the Youth Council Share Drive, you will find in the Youth Council Committee folder, you'll click on the Science Committee folder, and in there's an interactive map assignment spreadsheet. And what we want you to do is sign up for, if you divide 49 reserves by 9 students, that's going to be 5 to 6 reserves per student. So what we want you to do is sign up for 5 to 6 reserves that you want to research, and you're going to have 1 month to go on there, do some research, decide which reserves you're interested in, sign your name by them, and then at the end of 2 months, you'll need to have the rest of that spreadsheet filled out. And what that's going to be is, that's going to be the first spreadsheet that we use to actually create the map. So that's what we use. That spreadsheet that you'll be filling out in the next 2 months is what's going to be used to create this whole table here. So when you're filling out the reserve name and all of the following information, that is how we're going to be able to get that to pop up in this pop-up window when you click on that specific reserve. Is everyone following me? Does everyone have any questions that I can answer right now?
Is there like a digital copy of that map that you made at all?
Yeah, what I'm going to do is I will send out a follow-up email either later tonight or tomorrow morning, recapping what we talked about here. I'll attach a digital version of this file. I'll also write out instructions again of what your assignment is for the next 2 months. And again, if you have any questions, it'll also be, a resource for you to be able to have my email address, and feel free to email me at any time. Sarika, do you have anything to add? Did I miss anything? Was I clear?
Yeah, no, I think that's pretty clear. Like Sarah said, this is just an introduction. She's going to write a follow-up email that will act as a reference in case you forgot anything. I know it's a lot of information at once. So look for that follow-up email. And again, feel free to ask any questions.
Yeah, so I know that it can be hard to grasp like the concept of the final product that we're hoping to have. But what's important just for this workshop is that you know that you have a month to navigate to that interactive map assignment spreadsheet that you'll find in the Science Committee folder. And you have 1 month to sign up for 5 to 6 reserves that you're interested in. And then you'll have another month to do the research to fill out the rest of the information on that spreadsheet. Or if you want to do it all within the first month, feel free to do that too. But you have 2 months in total.
Yep. Yeah. So, any questions right off the bat on science committee project? No? Well, yeah, I'm really excited for this interactive map. I think it'll be really fun. I remember like a year and a half ago trying to find something similar to it online, thinking that someone must have made this. And that's kind of how that started. And I think that having a visual of information is a really good way to communicate stuff to people. So I will go ahead on to our leadership discussion. So this workshop is called Navigating Conservation. And what I wanted you guys to think about with both the personality test that I sent you and that paper about conservation, just thinking about what conservation is. So defining conservation to you, and then learning how you plan to be a part of it. So one of the things that I think about conservation is how complex it is. It's so complex and interdisciplinary. So to me, conservation can be different things to different people, but they can all be right. So something that I want each of you to answer right now is about the personality test. So I hope you all had time to take that. What I want you to tell everybody is what type of personality that you got. I do understand that it's an online test, so if you agree or disagree, you can add that as well. But I want you to talk about what you learned about your leadership styles and strengths, and then how does that fit into your idea of conservation? Do you see yourself in conservation, and where do you see yourself in the future fitting in? So really quick, for me, my personality that I got was a campaigner. And one of the strengths of a campaigner is vision. And I totally agree with that. One of my weaknesses is like details and I think on the ground logistics. And I would have to agree with that. It's hard to admit your weaknesses, but it's true. I have these ideas for month-long or year-long projects, and that's why I've created a team, with Liz, Sarah, Brooke, and all of you. So that's how I fit into conservation. I think is where I am right now. So anyways, I am going to hand that over if someone wants to take over, or I will call a name. Ugh, I will call a name, but if somebody wants to go ahead, just go over what personality type you got, what you learned about yourself, and how you see that fitting into conservation as you see it.
Okay, I'll do it. I got the executive, which I felt the test was kind of spot on onto what it was, but I had somebody else take the test and they felt it wasn't spot on really at all. But it did, I feel like every time you look at that, and even as silly as my signs and stuff, it does kind of help me to identify my personality traits and maybe things I can work on, and also things that I'm good at. I'm in job hunting mode, so everything's a resume builder, cover letter, wower. So now what was the other part? How it affects conservation? Or why?
Yeah, how, like what you learned about yourself. How do you see yourself fitting into conservation as you see it?
Using it. Well, I have a way of translating information to people of all ages in a compelling and thought-provoking manner. So I think the idea of an executive said that, and this is actually kind of funny, it said that one of my strengths is like I can take the lead if need be, but I also work, it's about working together as a group and letting everybody shine. So, I mean, that's one of the reasons I love being in the science field versus any other field, is because it's about teamwork and it's not about individual success. And that's what conservation is. Save the world.
Yay.
Okay, that's enough out of me.
Yeah, awesome. What about you, Serena?
Well, I got the advocate for my personality, and I felt like it was really spot on with my personality. Like, freakishly super accurate to the point where I, like, sent it to my mom right away, and I was like, Mom, you have to take this. Like, you need to let me know if you're experiencing the same thing as me. But she's yet to do that. But anyway, one of the strengths that it said that I have is just really being motivated by a purpose and a cause that I feel would make the world better in a way, and doing things that advance other people rather than myself. And as far as that connects to conservation, I think that really connects to why I want to be a part of Wild Tiger, is all about the cause and what it's trying to do and help these communities that I may not exactly be in contact with, but just knowing that it's not only helping their well-being, but you know, just ecosystems as a whole. And then as far as weaknesses go, I can be a little sensitive sometimes because so much of who I am is about connecting to people and being empathetic. And so sometimes criticism can touch my feelings like a little too much. And so just learning to kind of see past that and not take things too personally to that point. Yeah, it was really cool what it said. So.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah, I think conservation is so much about the passion, and it feels good, you know, like in your heart. It feels good doing conservation. So that's interesting. I like how you sent it to your mom. That's actually exactly what I did too when I first took this personality test.
The other person I made it take it.
So on to the next person.
This one was talking about how basically I like to get to know people beyond like the surface level, so I enjoy hearing about where people are coming from or what their background story is, and I felt that was super true, and everything it was saying about myself, like I had it in quotes, because all of my friends say, like, oh, you know everybody. I'm like, I don't know everybody. And then in this like personality thing, it was like tends to know a lot of people. I was like, oh my god. And so there's a lot of things that were very true in this. But one of the weaknesses I found was also that Serena had was too sensitive. It's like in getting to know a lot of people, I like want to make sure that everyone's happy, but I have like a sensitivity to like different things where I kind of pay too much attention to what other people want, like not to myself. So that was one of the surprising ones, but I think the ability and the willingness to get to know people and talk to people is very big in conservation, because you're very much dealing with organisms and animals that can't talk for themselves, so the people you're going to be talking to are the people on the ground and the human beings and things like that. And everyone's affected, so I think that's going to help a lot with conservation and my willingness to talk to people I don't really know, which is kind of exciting. Yeah.
Yeah, great. Mihak, what about you?
Yeah, so I think this personality test was really very true because it said that I have a lot of practical skills where I try to make like a to-do list and just push everything, so like it's not just a plan, it's also implemented, which is actually a very useful thing for doing our conservation project, because usually I have been with some NGOs where we definitely try to achieve a goal. It's really hard to do in like day-to-day life, especially in India. So I think that's going to be a really good strength for me working in this project. And for the weakness, I knew this weakness of mine before, and it told that I try to do everything to like the perfect level. I have to do it, like give my 100% and get a very good output of it. Otherwise, I get discouraged. So yeah, that's what it did for me.
Yeah. Well, awesome. And what about you, Charlotte?
So I got the protagonist, and one of the strengths was it was about like having a lot of like energy and passion and like authenticity, and also about like working with details and trying to be reliable for a team. And one of the weaknesses was dealing with tough decisions, because sometimes I get like paralyzed when I'm overthinking each side. And so I was thinking about how, in terms of conservation, like I'm somebody who would like to like find a really specific project and maybe not be the one like making huge overarching decisions, but instead working at a very specific, targeted, like towards a very focused goal. That's something that I get really into once I find something that I can stick with. Yeah.
That's awesome. I mean, that's such a good thing to identify right now off the bat, you know, and also take into account that your personalities can change. So we will actually be taking this personality test again at the end of the year. So kind of make a note maybe about what you got right now, and it could change, and you could totally agree or disagree. But yeah, I just thought that'd be a little fun. So Stephanie, what about you?
Okay, so I thought it was pretty accurate too, and I had a couple of my friends take it, and theirs were so spot on. It was like scary. But I got entertainer, and it was basically, I don't know, just that I want to be around people all the time. I like being with people. I basically the opposite of what my career goals are is what it says. Like it's like, you would hate doing this and this and this, and I'm like, oh, well, that's all the jobs I've been researching for the last 2 months. And but I don't know. So it talked about one of my strengths was being social, being able to connect with people, and I think I'm having teamwork or working in whatever, you know what I'm saying. But I obviously that's an important part of, you know, science and conservation. And I think it's good for like outreach and being able to talk to people and educate people on the issues, because a lot of people don't really understand like the huge effect that like one species can have by being endangered. So I think that's really important. And
yeah, that's awesome. Well, yeah, again, one of the things I think about conservation is that all personality types fit in somewhere. So I hope from the paper you kind of learned how, you know, how many different ways you can fit into conservation. And Veronica, so you just joined our call. Thank you. Sorry I couldn't be of technical assistance, but it seems like you figured it out. We were just going over our personality types, and what you learned about your leadership style, and maybe how you see yourself fitting into conservation based on what you learned about yourself. So what personality type did you get, Veronica? Can you hear me? Veronica? I don't know, maybe, can everyone else hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. I don't know. Let's see, Veronica. Let's see. We'll just take a second. Maybe while Veronica's doing that, we'll see if the sound can work. I'm not sure if her volume is down or what, but I will introduce our guest speaker. So Crista Valentino is our guest speaker tonight. She is the Chief Coalition Builder at Coalition Wild. I sent you guys a link to that website. I hope you might have been able to check it out before now, and maybe you have some questions for her specifically about her work right now. But she works with conservation individuals and organizations from all over the world. And she recently got back from an awesome trip to Peru. She traveled to a river that could have been dammed up, I believe. And she was working with the people and the locals who wanted to protect it. So Crista, welcome to the council, and the floor is all yours. Oh, I think you're muted.
There we go.
There we go.
Hi. Thank you for the generous introduction. I've been listening to you guys going through your personality types and talking about them. What's really interesting is probably one of the things I've learned the most since I've started working in this, I guess, in this capacity in this field, is exactly what you were saying, Sarika, of how each personality type fits in a different way. And oddly enough, maybe not oddly enough, but interestingly enough, the thing that I found has been most successful for me has been either building a team or being a part of the team that has all of those different personality types integrated in. You know, each person sort of brings a different something to the table, and so it was really cool listening to hear, because since a lot of you are different, it'll be interesting to see how you guys work together and complement each other. So Sarika, I guess when we were chatting, you had asked me to chat a little bit about sort of where I got where I am and what I do, and is that correct?
Yeah. So in workshop 1, we introduced personal narrative and kind of just went over defining leadership. And I think personal narrative, or just your story, it's always good to hear. You can learn a lot about somebody and their passions. So yeah, we would love to hear yours.
Yeah, absolutely. So mine sort of starts on, I would say, of course, from childhood. It really only starts 3 years ago, and when I was able to really start connecting the dots and actually seeing how my life in general has set me up to where I am today. So I grew up in New York. A little background: I grew up in New York. I went to school in Connecticut, graduated university with a major in communications and public relations and marketing. And then directly after school, I moved to Salt Lake City, Utah, for a job. While in Salt Lake, worked there for a couple of months, and then eventually made my way up to Jackson, Wyoming, which is where I work now, or live now. And once I moved to Jackson, long story short, got a job at a nonprofit environmental organization, Grand Teton National Park, where it was a very small organization, and it ended up actually, after my first 6 months of just sort of being there, like front of house intern, kind of did a little bit of everything, the executive director quit, and so the program director and I were the only 2 employees. And so we basically took a $100,000 organization to a $500,000 organization by splitting it down the middle. He was like, I will take dealing with the board and fundraising and back of house stuff, and you deal with the front of house of the program development, of the working with the people, of visitor interpretation, admin, like all that stuff. And so we split down the middle and just worked our butts off for about 2 years when we almost burnt out and put our heads in a river. But in that organization, I was given a lot of freedom to develop and create and envision what our programming looked like. And a lot of what that was working with young people, especially disadvantaged people, to get them into nature. And what I was finding really interesting for me was that what was working was, rather than trying to develop a program that I thought would engage people with the outdoors, rather what was working the best was letting them decide what that would be. So creating a space where we invited people to connect with nature in their own way. Fast forward a little while, we held an event where I became connected with this gentleman. He's in his late 60s. His name is Vance Martin, and he's the president of the Wild Foundation. And he had been for 35 years, or has been for 35 years. The Wild Foundation is an international organization that connects people, wildlife, and wild places, and works to protect them. And they work around the globe. And every 4 years, they put together a World Wilderness Congress. And they're all over the world. One was in Alaska, one was in Mexico, one has been in South Africa, so they bounce around. And at the 9th World Wilderness Congress, the delegation there, which is a delegation of about 10,000 people, had recognized that there was not a lot of young people in the audience. And so they were saying that for the 10th one, they made a resolution that they would create a young person's delegation so that they could really engage with more youth and young people, young professionals. And so I had this event, and over a glass of wine, started talking to Vance Martin, and he looks at me and he goes, "So we need to create this youth delegation for this World Wilderness Congress coming up in 6 months. Do you want to do it?" I was like, yeah, sure. I could totally do that. No idea what I was doing. And so from there is where Coalition Wild was sort of born from. It was originally, and so in those 6 months, I had worked to put together a team of international people from all different walks of life who were very, very different personalities and skills, all under 35. And we started developing this youth delegation. But what we were realizing is that in the process of building it, that this wasn't a sole example of this happening, that young people don't really have a voice and a way to promote and share their work on a global scale. And so one of my steering committee members was like, why are we just doing this for the World Conservation or World Wilderness Congress? This should be an ongoing. This should be an ongoing movement. And so I went to Vance and I said, "Hey, we have this idea of launching it at the Congress, but that would be a program." Like, I love it. We should definitely do that. Go ahead. You know what you're doing. And I was like, "Yeah, totally, absolutely." And so. Literally, that's how Coalition Wild was born, and we, and talking about personal narrative, I'll go a little bit deeper. So, 2 of the co-founders, there's 3 of us, or we're 3 of our co-founders, me, my coworker John Mobeck, and Simon Jackson, who's from Canada, who has led youth movements around the world, and he's a motivational speaker now. He's 31 and has been named Time Magazine's Hero for the Planet. I mean, this guy is incredible. Were supposed to join me in Spain at the 10th World Wilderness Congress for this launch. And the 3 of us together were supposed to be giving a launching speech to 10,000 people about this program. Well, that was the year. So I flew over to Spain to get everything ready. And John and Simon were coming 2 days after me. And John, that was the year that and I don't know if somebody doesn't have their mute on, but it gets a little loud sometimes. I don't know if that's a problem. But so that was the year the sequester happened, and all the national parks closed down. Our organization was
Will everybody turn their mute on? There's somebody that's pretty loud. just sounds like it. So everybody go up to their the top of their window, and some white buttons show up. Just press the one with the microphone with the stripe, just like that. To unmute, obviously press it again, but we'll keep it on mute while Crista is talking. So sorry for the interruption, Crista. You continue.
So John was supposed to fly out 2 days after I was, but that was the year of the sequester, and so all the national parks closed down. And our organization worked in a national park, and so because he wasn't able to leave because he had to be there to like manage this sort of unprecedented kind of emergency. And so he emails me while I'm over in Spain, and he's like, I can't come. And I was like, what? You know, like we're supposed to give a speech together. What are you talking about? Well, I was like, it's fine. Simon's going to be here. Well, the morning that Simon flies out, which is the day before our speech, Simon gets a rare strand of the flu and is vomiting blood and still tries to go to the airport, and they shut him down and won't let him get on the plane, to the point where they actually put him on a stretcher and drive him to the hospital. And I get a text from him email from him with a photo, like a selfie photo of him hooked up to IVs, and he's like, I'll get on the next flight as soon as they let me out of the hospital. And I was like, Simon, do not come to Spain, to a country where we don't speak the language very well, where you're sick, and I'm going to have to take care of you. That's stupid. Don't do that. And he was like, well, like, I don't want to leave you there. You know, like, you have to give the speech. And I was like, it's going to be fine. So I have to go and tell Vance that the two people and our speech and everything we were going to do and our whole presentation is, like, gone to hell. And Vance looks at me and he goes, well, you'll be fine. Like, you'll give a 45-minute speech by yourself. You're okay, right? And I was like, yeah, it's great. I could totally do this. Yeah, absolutely. And so I did. And again, as this is all happening, I didn't really see a correlation or an idea in my life of like a thread. But fast forward 3 years, and I've since quit my job at the Miri Center and started my own business. I work on Coalition Wild almost full time, and now I continue to lead different projects that connect young people to nature on a global scale, helping to galvanize and connect and develop a community where that offers support and the ability to cultivate more action, you know, and this idea that one person can make a difference. And I'll still tell you that I still have no idea what I'm doing, but just as like when I look back at it, and even before moving to Salt Lake City, and even before going to college, and every single major decision in my life, I feel like when I look back, I don't really remember making them deliberately, but I do remember something kind of plopping on my lap, or like an opportunity that was there, and just being like, yeah, I could totally do that. Even though in the back of my mind I was like, what am I getting myself into? And figuring it out. And as I've continued to do it and gotten older, I've noticed that oftentimes I think we all sometimes put boundaries or limits on ourselves, of this idea of like, I don't know how to do that, right? Like, I'm not trained in that. I don't have experience in that. I can't even envision what that looks like. And we stop ourselves from being like, no, I have to say no, I can't do it, or like, I'm afraid to. Like, what if I fail? What if I completely crash and burn? And what I've noticed though is, without giving myself the option to say no, of just faking it and saying, yeah, you always figure it out, and it always ends up being much better than you ever anticipated. And you actually do know much, much more than you thought you did. And you have much more experience and a skill set to make whatever you sort of jump into work. And so when I do look back and think of all those moments that when I say it sort of seem a little haphazard and almost reckless of telling people like, yeah, I totally know how to do those things. It was maybe less reckless than I felt at the time, and more a little bit of faith in myself that I wasn't giving it, you know? And so when you think of personal narrative of where are you today and where are you going to go towards, I keep trying to remind myself that every time I'm kind of scared or cautious or questioning something of like, should I make this decision? It's often an indicator for me that I should say yes. Because if I'm not scared, if it isn't uncomfortable, if it's not pushing me mentally, physically, emotionally, then it's too easy, right? Like there's that quote out there that if your dreams don't scare you, they aren't big enough. And without knowing it, and this is really easy to say looking back, but without knowing it, I think that I was sort of living that in the moment and just trying not to focus on it, or else I would have probably had like a nervous meltdown at some point, but I haven't had one of those yet. But so yeah, I guess what I'm trying to say is as you all get into the field or continue your what you're doing and your careers and look towards what you do as that next step or that next path or where you want to go, I'd say to embrace that uncomfortable feeling. And if it's not uncomfortable, that maybe you should be pushing yourself a little harder, because we definitely all sell ourselves short all the time. It's so much easier to be comfortable and so much easier to be like in your little safe space and being like doing what you know, and I can answer emails all day, and this is so easy for me. But what I've found has also been the most rewarding is when I haven't given myself a chance to say no or an opportunity to back out, you know, where you kind of have to step to the plate and you kind of have to impress yourself and be like, oh yeah, I am completely capable and I have the ability to do this. And that's something I remind myself all the time as new things pop up and I try to decide, you know, the next step or the vision or how big we want to go and what we can accomplish. Of often when I think of, even now, like I'll create our vision for 2016 or 2017, etc. And for some reason, it always starts really easy and small. And I'm like, yes, we're going to have this many Facebook likes, and we're going to send out these emails, and we'll get these many people involved, and it'll be great. And then, like, I sit on it for a little while, and I'm like, you are not, this is stupid. And I, like, scrap it. And then I go bigger. I was like, we're going to go to at least one conference. And, like, they, you know, they grow a little bit. And then I share it with one of the steering committee members who's become a good friend. Actually, they've all become good friends. But who's been there from the beginning. And he always says to me at the right time, he's like, would you, like, no, go bigger. And I'm like, okay, we're going to a conference this year. Even though we probably won't, it's still better to think that way, right? And so, yeah, I guess that's sort of the basis for me. And I think that when I look overall of my life, even as Sirka was saying, of like my trip to Peru, you know, I had a friend plop it in my lap and say, do you want to come on this river trip to come to Peru for 3 weeks and go on this river trip with a bunch of Spanish speakers that you don't know and help us develop a campaign to save this river? I was like, ooh, that's bad timing. I don't know. That's a lot of work. And then my head was like, why wouldn't you go? Go. Like, it's going to be great. Like, it's going to be, yes, go. And it actually ended up being probably one of the most life-shifting moments that I've had recently. And so, yeah, I just keep, I guess for me, keep trying to remind myself that to keep making myself uncomfortable, because there's no way that you grow and learn and get more experience and more skills and do better work, you know, and affect things unless you're pushing yourself. And so I think, how's that?
Yeah,
for personal narrative?
I think that's awesome, Crista. I loved hearing it. I think, You motivated me. I think all of us can agree this is the year of the yes, right? Krista said yes to everything, so we can too. Yeah. Well, it sounds like one of like the things that kind of kickstarted your career is networking and who you knew. So for these students here, what do you have any tips on networking? I think for somebody, I remember going to my first conference. It was actually a part of my internship, was going to this conference, and I was like, how am I supposed to talk to these people? I have no idea what to talk to them about. First off, I have no idea, and then second off, I'd see people who I recognize and like kind of get like a fluttery feeling, you know, like it was a science conference, so yeah, so just someone who you get fluttery for, and it's like, whoa, okay, I want to go talk to them because this is my chance, my only chance, but like, what do you say? So yeah, I guess what would be your tips for networking? Because I think networking is a huge aspect of advancing your career and just branching out and getting new and fresh ideas. So yeah.
Well, I'll say this to start with, Sarika. You were the one that reached out to me from the beginning, so you were a much better networker than you lead on.
The elbows.
Networking, still, I still have to muster the courage up every time I go into a room full of people that I don't know. It's nerve-wracking. It's terrifying. How do you even start? Like, right? What's your icebreaker? I'd say a couple of things have always rung true for me, and a lot of this has been what I've been maybe taught extraneously, almost by osmosis of being around people, and like what I've watched, especially people that I really admire or who've mentored me, and some of it's also just trial and error, and that means trying and then crashing and burning. But one, in general, networking is always uncomfortable. It's uncomfortable for everyone. Like that. Vance Martin, who's the president of the Wild Foundation, I told you, he's one of my, he's a mentor, he's a father figure, he's my boss, he's a lot of things, and we still go to events together where he's like, oh, I feel so uncomfortable. Like, you could be in the profession for 60 years and still be uncomfortable. Everyone feels that way, so embrace it, I guess. One thing I always try to do is have a couple of go-to questions in my mind of people, and things that are deeper than just like, who are you? What do you do? Where are you from? I mean, those are safe ones, but really trying to learn about people. And it also depends, of course, and a lot of this is going to have clauses, but like for more experienced people, older, whoever's in the field, experts, etc., I try to be very genuine of being not like you're just meeting a celebrity pop star and you're like, oh my God, I'm your biggest fan, this is so great, you know, but actually saying, I really appreciate your work, starting with a compliment, and saying, like, I would love to learn more how you got into the field, or I admire doing something like, or something, tell me how you learned that. I read your book one time, and I would love to know what your inspiration was for this. You know, so having a little bit in your brain of, especially some of those key people that you are, as you were saying, Sarika, flustered over, you know, so you know them, but having something more that you can ask them to allow them to talk to you. But I would say in general, consistently being the person, I always feel more comfortable when I ask the questions, when I could be truly engaged with somebody and learn about who they are. And what I found is by doing that, I always get the feedback that I am much more memorable than somebody who's just, if I was there, just telling them about myself. Because quite frankly, everyone loves to talk about themselves, right? And as much as we each like to talk about themselves, the point of networking is also for you to meet somebody and for often you to develop a connection that then will further your career. I mean, at the most blunt and kind of crass of it, And so trying to really invest in the people that you're talking to is really important. Also, a glass of wine usually helps, at least for me. But not too much, just one.
Here, here.
I was going to say stop at 2, never go to 3.
Never go to 3.
Yeah, we were just talking about how awesome it would be if we could do like a virtual happy hour.
Yes.
I'm going to figure it out. I'm going to figure it out for us because it would be fun.
I also think one of the most interesting parts of my job, or that's actually not accurate. One of the most important and most interesting things, and for myself, has been developing relationships with people around the world that I've kept up. I have literally pen pals that I write like hour-long emails to, from all walks of life, people younger than me, older than me, on the same age, who are 40 years in the field, people who have been published, people who are literally but people who you connect with. And it takes a lot of time. Like, I have 4 emails in my inbox that I'm like, all right, I need to sit down and get in touch with this person. Or you schedule calls and just catch up and chat. And cultivating and keeping those relationships are so much more important than anything else you'll ever do, because you'll never know how that person's going to connect you to somebody else, or when you're going to need something, or to ask a favor. And it's not, I don't say to do it disingenuinely, but I know that I've learned so much and have been taught so much by those people I've kept in contact with. And so when you do, and you can't force it, you know when you know. It's like when you meet somebody for the first time and you become instant friends, right? Like you have those people that you connect with. Taking the time to keep that relationship going is so important and cannot be understated, in my opinion. And that's I think something that's forgotten when you talk about networking. Because when I was always taught networking, it was like fast. Like you go in, you introduce yourself, you talk about yourself, and then you exchange cards, and that's it. Connecting over a phone call. It's sending emails back and forth and sharing a little bit more about yourself, but asking those questions. It's investing in somebody else. And then when they need something, they can come to you, but when you need something, you can go to them. And it's really, it enriches your life and you as a person as a whole, or at least for me, more than any single other thing that I've done in 29 years. And so I would say also think about that in the long term, that networking isn't just one-off little meetups or like follow-up emails. You know, it's ongoing. And it does take time, but it's so worth it. What else? Tips? Nope. I don't know. I'm going to a conference. Can I let you know how that goes?
Yeah. Well, you can test your theories there.
Right?
Yeah, I think I love what you just said about keeping up with and connecting with people on a deeper level. I think that's something that I want to work on, is keeping up with my connections. Because like you said, you can meet somebody once, exchange business cards, and that can totally be it. That's the rest of it. You can think a month from now, oh, I met that person, but nothing is actually happening. And I think that's the point of networking. You want to create a deeper relationship.
Can I share something to prove my point too? This is a 6-page, front and back, handwritten note from a 92-year-old man that I had met, who's now my pen pal. And we handwrite each other letters every month.
Okay, that is adorable. That is so adorable.
That's all fun fact about Crista. And it takes a lot of time. Handwriting a note is a really, this has been sitting here and I have to do it, but it's also the most enriching one of the most enriching parts of my life.
That's beautiful. I love that. So Does anyone have any questions for Krista? I mean, it's 8 o'clock, so we're going to wrap this up, but anyone have a question?
Yeah, sorry, I kind of blabbled on for a little bit.
No, that's exactly what we
I
wanted.
went against my own networking rule and just talked about myself the whole time.
I told you to talk about yourself, so you followed directions very well. But yeah, feel free to shout out a question, anybody. No questions? Okay, well, Krista was CC'd on our email. You have her email. Please reach out to her. I'm sure she wouldn't mind. I'm putting words into her mouth actually right now. But reach out to her if you have any questions. And yeah, I think this was an awesome workshop. I really appreciate all you guys following directions. I know the first workshop, I messed up a little bit on the technology aspect, but I think we're all getting it. Again, if you haven't filled out the Youth Council introductions in the Google Drive, please do so. Remember to send me a photo of yourself and look out for a follow-up email from Sarah on the Science Committee project. And the next workshop is August 15th. So I will send an email reminder about that. Any last questions, comments, celebratory cheers, maybe?
No, and I'll just say, no, Sarika, truly, like, if anybody wants to reach out, ask anything, however I can help.
Send a resume?
What did you say, Liz?
I said send a resume.
Yeah, well, thanks everybody for hanging out here. If you are on the Science Committee and have any questions about the project, stay on. If not, I'm going to stop this broadcast, and y'all are welcome to go back to your lives. But it was beautiful seeing all of you, and I look forward to the next workshop.
Bye.
Adios.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.